Hi, I'm Brittany Rizzo, and welcome back to My Only Friends. On today's episode, you'll meet my new friend, Pat Broe. Pat Broe is a best-selling author, mental health advocate, and an accomplished businessman. His journey to professional success was marked by personal struggles with anxiety, depression, and an attempt on his own life. These challenges ignited his passion for guiding others towards authentic living. With raw storytelling and practical advice, Pat empowers readers to overcome the unique mental health threats of modern life. Drawing from his diverse background spanning radio hosting to business consulting, he offers a powerful roadmap for cultivating a happier, more fulfilling existence as the real confident you. This episode reminds me of the Friends episode, the one where Rosita dies. Phoebe takes a temp job selling toner and soon finds herself helping a stranger through a mental health crisis, proving all it takes is a simple gesture to really change someone's day or life. Pat and I spoke for a while after the interview, and his kindness was something I really needed in that moment. And it took me a while to get this episode out because I didn't even know if I could listen to it back. I was in such a bad headspace and going through a really hard time, and listening to it back and hearing how raw and real Pat and I both got was inspiring, and it was nice to look back and think, wow, I have come a long way since this interview mentally. And it was thanks to him in many ways. You can purchase his book, The Real Confident You, in bookstores and on Amazon today. Please enjoy my conversation with Pat Broe. How are you?
I'm wonderful. I am wonderful. I, through this process, have caught a new favorite podcast to subscribe to. So this has been fun.
Oh, that makes me happy.
Yeah. I've been on a lot of really shitty podcasts through this press run, and I really like your show.
Oh,
So
thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I gotta say, I mean, in the spirit of what we're going to talk about today and everything, I am like hanging by a thread and
Yeah.
like mentally, I mean, I'm sure you could tell, like it has been a week. It has been a week for me. So I'm excited. I always find that like when, especially with the authors that I've had on, they always come on when I need to have these conversations.
Yeah.
Like selfishly, I'm like, okay, I get to have therapy for a second here.
Yeah. Do you feel like you've had an accidental education doing this podcast? Like,
Absolutely. And then I like get mad at myself because I find that like I neglect the podcast for a little bit, and I don't know if that's because I don't want to feel things.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, and like inherent in the podcast itself is it like it's like emotionally taxing, I'm sure, and so like it's very vulnerable, and that takes a lot. And so like that's hard to like rip the Band-Aid off every single day.
Yeah, but then it's also very rewarding because
Right.
and every time like I have this thought of like, look, I'm not in a good space mentally, and like I don't know if I could do a good interview. And like I've done an interview the day after I had somebody pass away, like, and I am like, how am I going to do this? And then I'm like, oh my God, I really needed to have that conversation.
Yeah.
And I always feel better. And it's always like, that's how everything is in life, right? Like you dread these things, not dread them, but you like build it up in your head and you're like, I don't know if I could do it. And then once you do it, you're like, oh, thank God I did that.
Right. Well, it's always like life is like a constant climb of the mountain, right? Where like you don't want to do it. It sucks. It hurts. Like, it's going to suck, but you really don't think about the reward at the end at all until it happens. And then it happens, like it's a constant, like reminding yourself that like, even if you fail like climbing up that mountain, like when you're eventually down at the bottom again and like your head's not spinning from the like lack of oxygen, like you're in a better spot and you're happier. And it's amazing.
So let's talk about you. Let's talk about you. So this book, The Real Confident You.
Yeah.
First of all, where are you from? Where are you right now?
I'm currently in Tampa, Florida.
Okay.
I'm like a citizen of the universe. I think I've lived pretty much everywhere. I'm a nomad. I guess I'll claim the Midwest. I lived in Wisconsin and Minnesota probably for the longest. But I military kid, so like spent my childhood in every little shitty rural town in this country.
And that had a lot to do with like your mental state. And
of course. Yeah. And I think, I think it's true of all kids, right? That you feel out of place, you don't know who you are. Um, it's so funny. We all rush to become adults, right? Like we
Mhm.
all think that like adults have it all figured out and like know who they are. And I always found myself really attracted to like in interviews and things like that. Like even at like 13 years, like I was watching Charlie Rose at like don't watch Charlie Rose anymore. But when it was okay to watch Charlie Rose, I was watching Charlie Rose at like 13, like just because I found people who like had themselves figured out so
Mhm.
interesting and fascinating. And so yeah, like I think with each place there was a new region and like regional identity and like trying to reinvent yourself at 7 is an interesting thing to do, but like it's what I did just to try to fit in, you know, and every kid's just trying to fit in. But when you don't have those cultural touchstones with people, especially at a young age, you are othered pretty quickly, right?
Mhm.
Like when I moved to rural Virginia and I didn't say y'all and I didn't call the teacher ma'am in every interaction because I just didn't know what that was.
Mhm.
It was a lot. And then you move to the Midwest and you call a woman over the age of 30 ma'am and you get sent to detention, right? And so like it's just a lot. It never felt like my world was settled. That's for
Mhm.
sure.
Yeah, like I could imagine too when you're I mean, I was only like the new kid once, I would say. Like
Yeah.
we moved when I went to high school because I was getting bullied pretty badly and my
Yeah.
parents were like, "We're not going to this high school with these girls." And then I found I was so afraid of the change and all these new people that I was still trying to hold on to everybody, you know, and like things that I was doing from my
Yeah.
past. And I would still go hang out at the places that were where our old house was. Like I was
Hmm.
so afraid of the new change because it
Hmm.
felt so incredibly
Hmm.
alone. And I do find that like I still am that way. Like when
Yeah.
I'm not good with change. And
Yeah.
like when people are like, yeah, but okay, like out with the old, in with the new, and like what's meant for you is meant for you. And like how like, yeah, that's
Yeah.
over now, but like how exciting that something better could come. I'm like, like
Yeah. Yeah.
no, that scares me because
Yeah.
like you just got comfortable and
You
now
just got comfortable, right? And you just
and
got some control over your own environment. It feels
yeah.
like, yeah.
Yeah. Now
Yeah.
like I don't know if I could do this. And you,
Yeah.
like you said, it's that mountain where you're like, it doesn't feel good. You know, you're going to have to do it. And then when you get there, you're like, okay, I can do this. And it always worked out. But like,
Yeah.
shit, like when do I just get to like coast and like
Right. Right.
be
When do I get actually to enjoy like all this uncomfortability I've been having?
right?
Yeah, I think maybe until 3 or 4 years ago, like I was, and I still have these problems. Like I'm not petrified of changed, but like I think I'm significantly better at it now. But like to the point of where my parents moved within the small town I was living in Wisconsin from like a townhouse to a house, and like it really shook me for a couple weeks. Like
Hmm.
just the house, like the possessions, you know what I mean? Or
Hmm.
like when I was in
Hmm.
college and they were throwing stuff out, like it's like no, those are the only things that I have that like remain, you know, and you know, if it was like a shitty Green Bay Packers pennant, like
Hmm.
I didn't care about it. They didn't care about it, but like it meant like letting go. And I think it's so hard for all of us to like let go. And I
Hmm.
think I think too, like culturally, we've seen this like really big reemergence in nostalgia, like just as a play,
Hmm.
you know, like I say it in the book, but like they rebooted Frasier. Like I don't know who the fuck asked for a reboot of Frasier, but we got Frasier again. But because I think societally we're having a really hard time like letting go, right? Because we look back at the pictures of our prom night and we're like, oh, you look great, and I was having so much fun, but we don't remember the stresses of those times, right? Like we
Hmm.
don't remember the sweat falling down our back and like the date that kind of wanted to go with you kind of didn't want to go with you and like drinking Mad Dog 2020 in a field or whatever you did after your prom night. Like we don't
Hmm.
remember all that stuff, but we associate all these positive feelings with our past because we're through the challenges of that time and we keep them like so we keep the happiness and get rid of the challenges.
Right.
Uh because there's certainty in the past and there's no certainty in right now.
And you know what? I'm sorry, I was looking through my notes and I don't know where it went on my phone, but I wrote like down that part of your book about nostalgia and how we crave nostalgia. And
Mhm.
nostalgia is the biggest mind trick in the world. And
Yeah.
I mean, this whole podcast is nostalgia. That's
Yeah.
all, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's this
And I don't think
very,
it's necessarily a bad thing, right? But
it's not, but it can be.
right, of
It
course.
can be. And
Of course.
I recognize when it can be like, you know, we crave, like you said, we crave this time where we knew things like we're nostalgia for that because we know that it turned out okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that when you said that, that like really hit me because I'm like, oh, like that, and that's why I watch Friends, because I know
Right.
that everything's going to be okay. And it
Right.
is like signifies a time where things were all really okay.
Right.
And it definitely, like, nostalgia for me, it's like it's a trap. I feel
Hmm.
trapped in it. Like, there are definitely
Yeah, me
things in
too.
my life that I won't let go of because they have nostalgia to them, and
Hmm.
I find nostalgia to be so romantic and
Yeah, me too.
comforting. And I mean, nostalgia, I would say, is the reason why I'm in a situation that I am in right now. And I think, oh my God, like it's all coming, like it comes back around and it's so
Yeah.
good and it could be
Yeah.
great. But like some things just belong in the past.
Right. When we all do. And like, I love nostalgia too, right? Like, um, I cannot tell you the amount of times I have seen the movie How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. I've seen that movie a million times because my dad finds it funny.
I have been
And
thinking of that movie so much in the past 24 hours. I can't even tell you.
look at it, we're kismet.
I
The
know.
wavelengths are working. No, it's like, and I've seen that movie 100 times, and I still get anxious in like the kind of shadowy part when we don't know, like, will they, won't they? Like,
Uh
are they
huh.
going to tell each other the truth? Like,
Uh huh.
um, and I've seen it a million times because like my whole family likes it, and like if you turn it on, it's gonna work. So like I'm not saying to people like you don't need to indulge in it, but I think you need to be intentional in what you're doing when you're doing it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Absolutely.
And knowing like if I'm going for comfort, okay, I'm telling myself like that's what I'm doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm going to be comfortable right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay, but like let's not lie to ourselves and say we're doing something else, you know?
Right. Right. Now,
And I love lying to myself, so I really have to check myself on that.
don't I
Yeah.
know it, girl?
Yeah.
I'm just like, this past week, I swear I'm like going through like a death and a rebirth, which literally like it's like the very first chapter of your book where you said, I didn't die that day, but part of me did. And
Yeah.
I relate to that so much because I've gone through that feeling one
Yeah.
too many times. And it literally just feels like that's people are like, that's life. Like, you
Mhm.
keep going through different stages and stuff, but like there are moments where a lot of people have like, it's like, I don't want to die, but I know that I can't live this life
Right.
anymore.
Right.
So, what was the moment of writing this book where you were like, okay, I need to talk about this. I'm writing this book right now.
Yeah. So I think, the book starts off with an article that I wrote. And I wrote it in 2020, pre-pandemic, like February of 2020. Little did I know how much the world was going to change in like a month. How gleeful I was. But I was about to graduate college. And I know that's surprising to anybody who's going to see my headshot on this and see how bald I am, but I was like I had taken my dream job. I was finally like in the perfect spot in my life. Like, so to set up the premise of the book, it's basically that when I was 16, I attempted to take my own life. And then over the course of the next half decade, like I really worked on myself and came across a lot of bullshit. And I wanted to share with people what was bullshit, what wasn't bullshit, and what you can do to like live a full, fruitful life in a
Mhm.
modern context that's pretty fucked up. And so in that process, I finally feel I felt like I was on the other side. Like I really finally for the first time felt like I was on the other side. But I did feel like I was living a bit of a lie, not telling people what I had been through. I never really told anybody outside of my parents um, what had happened when I tried to take my own life. And so in that process, in that healing process, like at the end of it, like I wanted some closure on it, truly.
Mhm.
Like I wanted to tell people. And I also thought maybe a few people who've been through this will see this and it'll help them too, and know that they're not alone. Because we see like you see ads on TV for mental health stuff all the time. People say stuff in interviews, but no one really speaks to anything, right? It's just like, hey, mental health. Okay, bye.
Mhm.
But that's the extent of it, right? And so I wrote this book really because when I released that article, it went, relatively viral, whatever that means for an article in this decade. But
Mhm.
um, and people just started reaching out and reaching out and reaching out. And all these people I'd known my entire life who I thought were living these really happy, wonderful lives that I felt like it took me a long time to get to, were raising their hand and saying, I'm struggling too, or I've been through this, or hey, me too, or me too, or me too. And people that you would never think, right? Hundreds of people started reaching out. And the consistent question was like, okay, but how did you get better? And that's what I had left out. And so it made me have to think about it and really relive all of that. And so as I continued to kind of help people and work with people, I realized the best way I could do this is just to compile all the information in one place and just give it out in a way that I thought was the easiest to consume. And so I wrote the book. And since the book has come out, it's been another whirlwind experience similar to the last time, right?
Mhm.
But hopefully, I think it's doing a lot of good for some people. I think need a voice.
Yeah. Yeah. So, wait, how old are you?
26.
26. You're
Yeah,
young.
yeah. I'm a baby.
You are.
I'm a bald baby.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, like you said, I am the type of person where, and that's what made me start this podcast,
Hmm.
was I was going through like rock bottom,
Hmm.
and I was just like, but how do I get out? I don't want to be in it.
Hmm.
How do I get out of it?
Hmm.
And I Googled what my favorite actors did
Yeah,
when they went in a hard time. And
yeah,
literally just this morning, I did it again. I read Jennifer Aniston's Vanity Fair interview from 2005.
yeah.
Anytime I go through, I mean, I wouldn't even call this one a breakup, but it's just a mind fuck,
Hmm.
basically.
Hmm.
And it was, and by no means was this guy Brad Pitt, but
Go
like
for
if
a moment.
she,
Anyway.
yeah,
Yeah.
like if she could publicly get over Brad Pitt doing this to her and
Right.
like come out on top, then I can get over this fucking guy. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
like,
Completely.
but you're just like, you don't know how in the moment. And
Hmm.
you look for a survival guide. You look for the steps to
Hmm.
take. You look for, okay, what did she do? Like, I
Yeah.
need a recipe. And that's what your book is. You have so many actionable items in
Yeah.
there of like how to get there, which I think is so important because again, like we can sit here and talk about our mental health all day long,
Yeah.
but people are still going to go, okay, but how? Like,
Exactly.
tell me how. And sometimes you don't have the strength, you don't have the clarity in your
Hmm.
brain, you don't have the wherewithal to just be like, okay, this is what I need to do. And I know that
Hmm.
this will make me feel better. You need
Hmm.
somebody to say, get up,
Yep.
wash your face, let's
Hmm.
fucking go. Like, wake up out of this. And
Hmm.
so I think that's amazing that like you are giving that to the world and you're taking your pain and you're turning it into something that can help others,
Yeah.
which I think is just the most brave thing that anybody can do.
I
And I,
appreciate that.
of course, and like sometimes I refrain from using the word brave because it feels a little
Yeah.
like, oh, you're so brave. Like, oh,
Yeah.
no, like
Completely.
I'm not.
Patronizing. I didn't take it that
Yeah,
way, but it
okay,
100%
good.
can be. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
people like would say that to
You're
me,
so
you're so
brave.
brave, you're so strong. Like,
Shut the
shut
fuck
up.
up. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
like, I'm not though. I'm doing this because I have to. Like, I don't have a
Right.
choice. The other
Right.
choice is like peace out. So like,
Right.
I okay, I appreciate that, but then you do get to a place where you can take it as a compliment and you're like, you know
Yes.
what? I am brave and I am
Yeah.
strong and like I worked my ass to get to this place.
Yeah. I also think it's like, I think it's with anything, it's like how it's said to you,
Mhm.
right? Like the way you just said it to me was like you actually thought that and you believe that. It's not like an Instagram like you're
Right.
so brave, it's like it's or the other thing too is like, when you go publicly with a story like this, you have so many people who like what I want people to know is like this is not a sad story. This is a happy story. Like I'm
Mhm.
a person who could be dead right now and instead I'm living my dream. I'm happy. I have friends that I love more than anything in the world. I've got a great family. I am able to live my passions and do things that like I never imagined I'd be able to do as like as a like the 13-year-old version of me would be so proud of me right now.
Mhm.
Like this is a happy story and I want a happy story for you too. Like don't come to me like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like I actually know, like we're on the other side of this. Like
Mhm.
and now obviously we're not on the other side of this, right? Like you battle every single day as someone dealing with any mental health issue. I think every human being battles every single day, right? Like
Mhm.
there is no perfect life.
No.
And I am a hypocrite and I don't follow the shit in my book half of the time because I forget about it, right? But I know what to go back to. Because I make mistakes and I fail and I'm human. And but nevertheless, like it's interesting when you go public with information like this, how people's perception of you changes.
Mhm.
Like I'm sure when
Mhm.
you started this podcast, I'm sure people started approaching you in like in a different manner.
Yeah, I think people think like you look a certain way or put yourself out there on social media in a certain way and they just think like, I didn't know like that's how you're feeling. I didn't
Right.
know that's I mean, my closest friends, they know and they
Yeah.
like this bitch never stops talking about her feelings. So I mean, granted,
Yeah.
they're always there for me, but it's
Yeah.
like I am a very like with my close circle of friends, like they know there's not a single thing they don't know about
Mm-hmm.
me. And they all have
Mm-hmm.
keys to my house. They all have my location. Like I am that's just who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And but it is like after and sometimes doing this podcast, like I feel too scared to say what's really going on in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And because I don't want to worry anybody. Like you have
Yeah.
that
Of course.
sense of like,
Of
but I'm
course.
fine, guys. Like I trust me, I'm okay.
Yeah.
But you're like, today I'm not. Like today I feel like
Yeah.
open wound. I feel like a
Right.
walking open wound. And like,
But yeah,
but
now you feel like you can't say that.
yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's a
I
weird
have the same
kind of
thing.
dynamic. Yeah, cuz
No, I have the same
because
thing.
when yeah, I'm sure like you were so open. So now if you like you're like do you feel like if you have like a bad day and your mental health gets shaky, people are like, "Oh my gosh, we have to keep an eye on him. Oh my god,
Of
is he okay?"
course. Yeah, of
And
course. And
that
like
almost makes it
you can't
worse.
say any, it may 100% makes it worse because then it makes it an object, right?
Mhm.
And the thing that I think people don't understand about mental health, and I think people don't understand about their own mental health, is that you can't, there are good days and there are bad days, and that's okay. And that, like, just because you know that I have a mental health issue doesn't make it an object for you to think about all day or
Mhm.
to admire or to detriment or to whatever. And it also doesn't mean that there's something fucking wrong with me,
Mhm.
right? Like there is something wrong with me, but like the same thing there is wrong with anybody, right? We all have our own quirks and our own things that we're dealing with. Um, and
And it's
you
not
need,
wrong. I wouldn't say wrong. I would say it's human. It's a very
it's
human
human.
part. Yeah.
It's human. Yeah, human is a much better word to use. Um, and it's all part of our weird humanness, right?
Mhm.
And so, yeah, it you quickly find out who your real friends are and who isn't your real friends and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's a good thing in life, honestly. Like a cleanse of the world timeline for myself was a good thing.
Mhm.
Was a good thing.
So when because I'm like, okay, you wrote this book and there's so much information and there's so many
Yeah.
facts and there's so much research. Like, did you go to school for this stuff? Did you just once you got on the other side of your
Yeah.
suicide attempt, did you just dive into like educating yourself as much as possible and able to write this book? Or is this because I'm like, okay, I can't write a book like this. Like like
I think you could. I think you could. But yeah, and it's not. Well, here's what I'll say is that I obviously, yes, I did start like immediately researching and I started to look at like people who I resembled as successful and what I admired about them and what I didn't admire about them and how they got to the places that they were, right? And then kind of following the trail arc down to like, okay, how did they get like that? Right. And reading and like the podcast, I think I wouldn't be alive without the podcast world because like I've learned so much from like fantastic podcasts and fantastic people. And thankfully, like I'm naturally like pretty obsessively curious. So like it
Mhm.
has fed that engine wonderfully. I don't know if I could live in a different century. That being said, what's funny about the book is as I wrote it, it's a lot of stuff that I knew innately, right?
Mhm.
Because I like it had been drilled so much, but I forgot where I learned a lot of the stuff that I learned. So it was like actually going back and refinding where I found all this, or like finding research to justify all this stuff. So I didn't go to school for psychology. I went to school for marketing, like anybody else, and which is like psychology, but you make more money doing it. And I no, but I just became obsessive about self improvement and becoming the best person I could possibly be probably to a fault. Like it became too much, right? Like I was very close to becoming that guy that dumps millions of dollars in his body so he can live to 200 years old. That Brian, whatever dude, who looks like a
Mhm.
wax figure. Um, but I just dove into every little individual way, and then you slowly find light and you slowly get momentum. But yeah, I think starting at like 17 years old, it was basically like, I'm not okay. How do I get okay?
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
how do I get okay?
Yeah, that's I mean,
And honestly, I wasn't brave enough to ask for help. That's the
mm,
other thing. I wasn't going to ask anybody for help. I come from a military dad. It's like a very bootstrappy existence, right? Like you can help yourself, you can outwork this, which you can't, by the way. Like you need help.
yeah.
But to the extent that I could, to get brave enough to ask for help, that's when I did
Yeah.
my own work.
What, if you don't mind me asking, like, you attempted to take your own life. Like, how
Mhm.
did you get yourself out of that moment if you were afraid to ask for help?
Yeah, I think a moment like that when you kind of come to out of it is sobering in and of itself,
Mm-hmm.
right? I had had an ankle injury. I was on large amounts of prescription painkillers. And so that doesn't help, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that in and of itself makes it worse. And so the first thing was like just kicking that out of my life. And then, in a couple weeks, it was like, okay, I'm still depressed, but I don't want to take my own life, right? And that's step one.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's, okay, how do I not get depressed? How do I not have panic attacks? Right? Like, okay, look up how do you stop panic attacks? And that's when I learned about, box breathing and transcendental meditation and
Mm-hmm.
how stimulated young adults were at that time. Like that the research was kind of just coming out. Like I Snapchat happened, Facebook happened, Instagram happened. It all kind of happened while I was in high school. So no one really knew anything, right? Like at that time, everybody just thought like, oh, these kids and their phones. Like we're talking 10 years before Jonathan Haidt comes out with all of his information about kind of what's happened to the kids since social media had started. So I was really lucky to be on the precipice of all that information kind of starting to come out and the little things that I could do in my life. I remember reading like Jerry Seinfeld
Mm-hmm.
really struggled with his own personal anxiety and started doing meditation. And so then I started. And then it was like YouTube videos at night, like listening to like some guy home in my ears, but it actually changed my life and it really helped. So
Right.
it was really taken in baby steps, I think.
You write that nearly 20% of high school students have had serious thoughts of suicide. That means if
Isn't
you're
that crazy?
yeah, means if you're teaching a high school class right now, 1 in 5 of your students has contemplated suicide deeply. Let's say you've graduated in the past decade. In your group chat, every fifth message is coming from someone who has contemplated ending their life.
Hmm.
That is so hard to digest.
Hmm.
And like, but it's so true. And
Hmm.
I just think there's a quote going around on Instagram right now that is really like, you don't have to know somebody's experiences to be kind to them. And
Hmm.
that is like very, very much what, you know, you can just take in all of this is like,
Yeah.
it shouldn't take me telling you like, oh, my friend died yesterday, don't be a dick to me. Like, just don't be a
Right.
dick, you know?
Right.
Like, sorry if I'm not smiling today, I'm going through this. Like, you shouldn't, people should just lead with compassion and empathy towards one another.
Completely. Yeah. And imagine yourself in their shoes, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, like when I was that kid, like by all measurable accounts, I was like the golden boy,
Mhm.
like I was running the TV show for the school. I had just like, I had done, I was on the football team. I was on the wrestling team. Like all my teachers loved me. Like I was the kid who could get away with anything, like the principal had been to my house and not because I was a fuck up. I was a
Mhm.
fuck up, but not because I was a fuck up, because he
Mhm.
liked me. And so by like all measurable accounts, like I was fine,
Right.
and so there's many people in your life who probably seem fine who are going through something.
Right.
And it doesn't give you license to be an asshole to them,
Right.
which you will be, right? But acknowledge that and say you're sorry and try to do better the next time. And that's
Mhm.
all we can do, really.
Then I was talking about, I wrote down the constant stimulation places your brain into reaction mode.
Hmm.
Like this, the being overstimulated checklist,
Hmm.
I failed it miserably.
Yeah.
Like every single one. I was like, oh God.
I still
Like,
fail, so it's okay.
yeah, it was. And you said, notice a lot of those have to do with your ability to hold attention and our discomfort when we aren't being stimulated. And then I
Mhm.
wrote, help me.
Yeah,
Like,
I still have those problems. Like I still
yeah,
like am reaching for this thing, I held
yeah,
up my phone, by the way. I realized this is audio only, but
yeah.
we as and this gets into like very technical academic language, right? But like as our phones have started to become like another organism attached to our body, like I don't think people necessarily realize like what it's doing to them.
Hmm.
Um, and we are dopamine addicts.
Hmm.
Um, if you look at the screen time numbers on your phone and it's above like 2 hours a day, like you are probably an overstimulated person.
Oh, mine's at like 8 hours a day. It's
Yeah,
ridiculous.
mine's pretty ridiculously high, but that's because my apartment's really loud. I'm making excuses for myself. This is me lying to myself right now in front of you. It's because my apartment's loud and I listen to podcasts at night, which you shouldn't do, by the way. You shouldn't do that when you're sleeping.
Hmm.
Look at me giving my own bad advice. But yeah, we all are stimulation junkies, but simultaneously that stimulation makes you really, really agitated.
Hmm.
Um, and really anxious and really depressed. And when the thing that you're reaching for stimulation is like showing you like an unrealistic version of reality over and over and over and over and over again. Like we all have this really distorted view of reality. And then when we go to Starbucks and we're standing in line, like we can't talk to other people because we're so addicted to our phones. And there's a million things you can do, right? But that's like acknowledging that as a starting point, I think is where we all need to start.
Yeah, it makes me sad because I feel like we live in this world where, and look, there's people who've come on this podcast before and we've had like such a great interaction and it's like, we're gonna be friends now. Like, let's go do
Yeah.
something. I never see them again.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I am 100% the type of person where I'm like, why didn't they want to be my friend? Why
Yeah.
didn't
Me
we go do
too.
something? Like, why didn't
Yeah.
we keep in touch?
Yeah.
And like, it's hard, like, as somebody, like, I thrive, and I think that's why I love friends so much. I thrive when I'm around my friends. They bring
Yeah.
out the best in me, they make me realize who I am. I can see the way they see me, and I go, oh, I'm not a piece of shit. Like,
Hmm.
okay, which is
Hmm.
not, amazing that I need them to do that for me. And it's something I work on all the
Yeah.
time on how do I hold on to myself and
Yeah.
realize these things when I'm not with these people.
Hmm.
But I thrive off of the close connections with people.
Hmm.
And I don't know how to be in between. I don't know how to just be like, oh yeah, this is my friend I see on occasion. Like, no, you're
Yeah.
like, I am like, you're all, once somebody's in my life, you're all in my life.
Hmm.
And like,
Hmm.
I don't hide anything.
No.
Now, does that mean there's a lot of people like that in my life? No, I'm
No.
selective about it. But I think we live in this world where so many people say that they crave those things. And then when it's right in front of them, they don't know what to do with it and they
Hmm.
don't really reciprocate or it's also like a matter of like the capacity that they have to like if they don't do it
Hmm.
for themselves they're not going to do it for others. But it is a weird time where it's like all these people are craving connection and you post that you crave connection and you post that you want
Hmm.
a real authentic world, but you're posting about it, you're not doing anything about it in
Right.
your real
Right.
life.
Right. And
So
you're probably posting about it with like a pretty heavily edited photo of yourself,
mhm,
like in the most glamorous shot you could ever have in your life.
mhm,
Right. Yeah, I wonder if it'd be helpful for your listeners to just go through like here are three things that I did that like consistently reset my relationship with my phone, with the world, with being able to connect with others.
mhm,
The first of which is literally just to detox. I think we have to. It's an addictive substance. It's really funny. This guy, Mark Benioff, he's the CEO of Salesforce. He called Meta, the company that owns Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp, and I don't know, probably like a slave trade or something. But he called them a cigarette company and like has basically been like labeled a class trader ever since and can't go to any of the cool parties with all the other tech bros because he said that publicly. But he's right. And so we're all hyper addicted to these things. So the first thing that I would do is do a detox. A lot of us use social media for our lives, for our businesses, whatever. Pick 24 hours that it's going to make sense for you to like delete all of the apps from your phone. Like you can't tell yourself, no, I'm not going to do it. Like delete the apps, get them off of your phone, stick the phone in your pocket. Like your mom can call you if there's an emergency, or you can call your mom, or like you can text someone, but like get anything that you're going to spend actual time scrolling on off of your phone. Just
mhm.
do it for 24 hours and acknowledge to yourself how many times during that 24 hours you're like reaching for your phone because it's shocking.
Oh,
How many
literally
little micro actions
yeah.
you're taking.
When I started
Yeah. Like,
reading this book, I did that. I deleted Instagram and TikTok off of my phone. And when I started reading this book after I
yeah.
failed that checklist miserably, and I was like, I, I was like, how do I
How
get,
did it
like,
go?
I felt so disconnected. I
Mm-hmm.
felt like, oh
Scary,
my
right?
God, I'm going to miss out. Like, what if somebody has to tell
Mm-hmm.
me something important? Or like, am I doing this? Like, there's people who are reaching out to me who like want to send me things and they're
Right.
thinking of me and I'm cutting them off. And it was like, oh my God, like, I'm thinking about everybody else, I'm not thinking about myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Mm-hmm.
you sit there and you're like, okay, like now what do I do?
Now what do I do?
I colored so much. I was at home at my parents' house. I have a
Yeah.
friend's coloring book. I suck at coloring.
Can you not keep it in the lines, or what's your problem?
Never,
Really?
never.
Are you like a Crayola girl though, or are we using colored pencils?
Oh, I was using Crayola crayons.
Yeah. Yeah. See, I think let's lower the degree of difficulty. Let's go colored pencils and then work our way up to crayons.
You
I
wanna know
always thought that was
what's
backwards for kids, but probably
yeah.
because they don't want kids with sharp objects in their hands. But colored pencils are way easier and it's soft. It's so nice.
See, I don't like the sound of a pencil on paper.
Oh, that makes sense.
It
Makes
like
sense.
makes my
Yeah,
skin
yeah,
hurt.
yeah.
But I've never been an artistic person that way. Like if it comes
Yeah.
to like, music and like singing and acting, like that's the artistic side of me. But
Mhm.
actually like arts and crafts,
Like with your hands.
it's embarrassing.
I'm terrible at it.
I do love Legos though, but again, that's instructions. I'm good with
Hmm.
instructions.
Hmm.
Give me a
Hmm.
play-by-play list of like what I need to do and I can do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it felt uncomfortable and it felt like, well, my dog is also sick right now, which has been
Hmm.
another reason why I've just been like
Hmm.
so not okay. And but I like sat with her, and like
Hmm.
didn't have my phone and I was just present with my dogs and just like really sitting. And I talk about it a lot on this podcast. Like we're so afraid to sit in uncomfortability.
Hmm.
We're so afraid to.
Hmm.
And we want that quick fix of like, oh, okay, well,
Hmm.
I know that I know that it's okay now. Like, oh, if I just
Hmm.
look at this once, I'll be relaxed. And it's like, well,
Hmm.
why do we need that to be relaxed?
Right.
Like, what is it in us that is like
Right.
craving this answer, quote unquote, from social media? Like, it's never gonna happen that way.
Right. And what's even worse is like it doesn't even relax you, it makes you worse.
Yeah.
You reach for the thing, it makes you worse than you
Hmm.
were before.
Hmm.
And you're left feeling like, oh, that's not what I wanted it to be, you know?
Hmm.
Because it's
Hmm.
never like it's never a hug. You know what I mean? Like it's never like seeing your best friend after 5 weeks and you're like, ooh, we should have mimosas because it's the naughty thing to do and it's fun. Like it's never that, right? It's
Hmm.
never it's just it's words on a screen and it's a little light box in your pocket and you get a little light dopamine drip and then it's over.
Right. And
And
it's
we're
like
all
it's
addicted to
a
just that little drip,
yeah,
drip, drip, drip.
it's a drug and like soon enough
Mhm.
like you got to add more so it feels better
Right,
because it's
right.
not hitting the same and it's hard and like I'm very grateful that like I went to school during a time where like all we had was MySpace.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
thank God. And even
Yeah.
MySpace that
Top
got
five's
us,
pretty vicious. That was pretty vicious though. The
you
top five
know,
was a pretty vicious thing.
top 8 and let me tell
Top
you,
eight. There you go.
I
Yeah.
feel like what was it? Like, I mean, right now I would be okay with rankings and people. Like they need
Yeah.
to step up a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like you guys need to know your
Yeah.
place, you
Actually,
know?
actually, you do need to know where you sit in my top eight.
Yeah, because
It's
like you're slipping.
it's so funny. Snapchat had this feature that they had to get rid of because I think it was
Like
causing
your top
actual
3 friends or
uh-huh.
whatever.
It was
Hmm.
causing like actual violence in relationships, and I think they had to stop it. But woo, did that stir some drama in high school?
Yeah.
It's like, did you see
Yeah.
X and X's? And you could see other people's. That's crazy. That was crazy.
I know.
Um, the
I'm
activity feed on Instagram,
I know.
that
Let
was
me tell you.
insane. That was insane.
Yeah, but see, my brain is so bad that like
Oh no, I'm the same way. It was like the greatest thing ever.
yeah, because now I
Yeah.
just I just take the extra steps to find out the picture they liked.
That's funny. That's
I'm
funny.
like, and that's my problem with social media. I'm like,
Yeah.
hmm,
Also, social media has made it so that every woman, I think, could join the FBI tomorrow.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah. The amount of things people know. I mean, I wrote a book about my entire life, so this is a little different now, but the amount of things that I would walk into a date with a woman knowing about me before the date started, and I knew that that person knew it, but they wouldn't acknowledge. It's great. It's great.
Yeah.
You guys are so much better than us in so many ways. I'll leave that as a sidebar, but it's insane. Okay, so to anybody listening, like I guarantee you, if you take one day off, like how did you feel after? Like how did you feel after the day after? Like the apps get back on your phone. Like, do you feel like you were using them differently? Like with more intention?
Yeah, I feel like I was literally just kind of like, okay, what am I posting for? Like, am I
Yeah,
trying to get somebody's attention?
yeah,
Am I doing it because I just don't want to feel alone? Am I doing it because I genuinely have something to share?
yeah.
And just kind of checking in with yourself about it and like,
That's it.
am I posting something to prove to everybody I'm okay right
Yeah,
now?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And like instead, I was just honest with what was going on in my life
Cool.
when I re-downloaded it and I posted about my dog, and
Hmm.
the amount of love that I received of people
Hmm.
being like, let me know how I can best support you. Let me
Hmm.
know if you need to eat. Let me know if you need to talk. Let me, like,
Hmm.
your dog knows you love her so much. Like, don't be
Hmm.
hard on yourself. So it's like, there, that helped me and like let me know that, like, okay, I can use Instagram for a genuine connection.
Hmm.
What I can't use it for is to prove myself to others or prove my worth
Yeah.
to others, because my worth
Yeah.
cannot lie in somebody else's hands, period.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I
It's.
do think, and I had a girlfriend who inspired me to do it, Molly, because I had texted her. I was like, I'm sending you, like, I have like the same 5 friends on
Hmm.
like TikTok where I send videos to,
Hmm.
and she wasn't responding. And I texted her. I was like, are you okay? And it's interesting because it's like there are people who don't even realize that you're not being active
Yeah.
anymore, you know?
Yeah.
And I saw her the other day, and so she took off social media off of her phone
Hmm.
for like a week or so. And I saw her the other day and she asked, "How are you?" And I was like, "I am to the point where you asking me how I am is going to make me cry." And she was
Yeah.
like, "That's exactly the point I was at when I took
Hmm.
social media off my phone as well."
Hmm.
And it's sad. It's because, like, I think like we're in our 30s,
Hmm.
and I think of like there are young kids. Like if this was happening to me at
Right.
16,
Right.
17 years old, I don't know what I would,
Right.
I don't
Like
know if
how
I'd be
much is
here.
like it worries me so much because it's much more pervasive now than when I was 16. But that's really why I wrote this book, right?
Mhm.
I think it can do a lot of benefit for people in their 30s and their 40s and their 50s and their 60s. And listen, there's a lot of boomers addicted to Facebook, like
Oh God.
just like posting about the wall. You know what I mean? They're having a great time living it up on Facebook.
Mhm.
Um, playing Farmville, living their dream. Uh, but like it was bad. It was bad when I was a kid, but like I could not imagine being 15 right now. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like I have more touchstones like with what those problems are like, but
Mhm.
I cannot imagine like being a depressed kid and then like having your depression basically shoved, like the things that are causing your depression like just shoved in your face
Mhm.
constantly.
Mhm.
You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And like a reality that actually doesn't exist, but it looks so much better than the one you're living.
Right.
And it makes your existence seem so small and so
Yeah.
insignificant when your existence is so significant, you know? For just if you go to the grocery store and talk to someone, like the way that that changes someone's day, you know what I mean? Like every little, like using the grocery store for example, again, like every little action that cashier has with someone over the course of a day, like does affect who they are. And you
Mhm.
being the person that smiled and said thank you and have a good day, like changed that person's day. Like you're that little small piece of your existence is so important.
Right.
And there's no app that will tell you that.
Mhm.
Instagram doesn't tell you that. Instagram doesn't tell you that your teacher, your world history teacher loves it when you answer questions, or
Mhm.
that your mom loves you, or your dad loves you, or you have friends that really do love and appreciate you and care about you. Um, and yeah, I could not imagine being a kid right now, but it's hard enough being an adult too, right?
Mhm.
And then you pile on more factors into that equation, right? Like money, like how
Mhm.
fake people are with the amount of money they make and all that kind of stuff. Like there's different factors at every age group. Um, but I wrote this book because I'm so concerned about those kids. I'm
Yeah.
so concerned. I'm scared. I'm really scared for
Yeah.
those kids.
Now, the book is called The Real Confident You. What do you think it is about building your self-confidence that has a tie to your mental health and like how much it can help you?
Yeah. I think if you have a self identity that you are secure in, you always have that to fall back on. If
Mhm.
you know that you have you, right? Because I think there's something that's so isolating about depression, anxiety, really any mental illness, that it feels like you don't have you,
Mhm.
right? You feel like you don't have anyone, right? That's the lie that you tell yourself when we're in our darkest moments. I think we tell it to ourselves in our lightest moments, right?
Mhm.
The date went bad and you come home and you say, no one likes me, but
Yeah.
at least you like yourself. And you're not in love with yourself and you're not infantilized with your own idea of yourself, but like you're secure in your identity and who that person is. And you know that like you've got your back. And I think for any human living the human experience, like knowing you have your back is about as powerful as you can be.
Mhm. Mhm. And it's also how would you say, like, for me, there are times where, like, there's a lot of self-abandonment
Mm-hmm.
out of fear,
Mm-hmm.
where I'm like, fuck, I didn't have my own back in that. And there
Mm-hmm.
are like, and it's only in certain situations, like when it
Yeah.
comes to jobs or friendships and
Mm-hmm.
like, people mistreating me in the world, I have my
Mm-hmm.
own back and I will stick up for myself. But when it comes to relationships, I'm like, oh, I can't speak up. Like, I
Yeah.
don't want to, oh boy. And you self abandon a little bit. And then
Uh-huh.
you go, wait, where did I go in this? Like, I have me, and that should
Mm-hmm.
like be
Be
enough for
enough.
me to just like say what I need to say right now. And it is interesting and like, on your hard days and when you do feel incredibly alone, then that's the place that I've had to fight to get to multiple times of being like, I am a whole person on
Mm-hmm.
my own.
Mm-hmm.
My value does not lay in somebody else's hands. It doesn't lay if
Mm-hmm.
I book an audition, if
Mm-hmm.
this person's mad at me, if this guy is being an asshole. Like, okay, then that doesn't have anything to do with me. And like,
Mm-hmm.
that sucks for them because I'm a really amazing person and like
Right.
they don't get to have me in their life and that's their
Yeah.
loss, but I get to
There.
have me in my life. So like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, what would you say were some of the steps that you took to get to that place of that
Yeah.
self-confidence and self-worth?
Yeah. I think, first of all, I think we've done a terrible thing in this country in raising kids with the idea that self-confidence is just something you should have and not something you should build.
Mhm.
You have to build your confidence because you have to build an identity, right? I kind of sounded like Neil deGrasse Tyson there for a second. I got professory. I'm going to stop that. But you have to build an identity. You have to build who you are. And so I think for me, and I know for me, it was finding things that I could dedicate myself to that I loved. So for me, that was like I worked at a really shitty college radio station, right? But I loved that college radio station. And when I learned so much about myself just trying and just putting effort into it and failing a lot and fucking up like a lot. Like I forgot to like there's this autoplay feature. By the way, most radio stations you listen to now are just like a machine. They just play
Yeah.
music and they like put a fake DJ in because it's radio and it's the 21st century.
Mhm.
Um, but I forgot to turn that on. Like the radio was dark, no ads
Oh
played
my
for 12
god.
hours. So I was the last shift at night and I forgot to turn it on.
That's
So there
amazing.
was yeah, so it just ended with like that was Prince on 89.5, but I dedicated my life to that, right? And I learned how to communicate and I learned a million ancillary things from something, just dedicating myself to something I thought would provide value to my life, right?
Mhm.
And if anybody can find something like that, right? And it doesn't have to be your work. I think people really get wrapped up in their work in these kind of conversations. I've been on like 100 entrepreneurship bro conversations in this press run, which has been one of the most annoying experiences in my life. Um, like I don't want to talk about your real estate deal. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Um, but they're great, wonderful people. But if you whatever that thing is, if you're really into comic books, great. Like there's a comic book convention in town. Like go volunteer security. Like just find
Mhm.
something to get really good at to master yourself at and to fail and put yourself out there and be a little vulnerable and be willing to make mistakes and learn and try over and over and over again. Maybe it's Legos. Maybe you want to be the greatest Lego builder of all time.
Yeah.
Cool. Do it. Like maybe it's video games. Now don't just play the video games, right? But start a Twitch stream or
Yeah.
whatever it is, right? There's like find something that you can build and try and fail at that you can anchor yourself into, right?
Mhm.
Like at least I have like that little piece of my identity and that's where built from, right? And from the radio, then I learned that I had the gift of gab, right? And then I started selling and then I had that part of my identity. And then you slowly start to branch off things from this one little seed that you plant and eventually it becomes a big garden of life.
Mhm. Now, when you feel yourself slipping back into like
Yeah.
old behaviors and patterns that bring you back to a dark place,
Mm-hmm.
with all the worksheets that you have in your book
Mm-hmm.
or, exercises, what is one that you typically go to the most?
The first one,
Box breathing?
I always box breathe. Yeah.
Yeah.
I find even if I'm not overstimulated, like it's just getting out of my own head. I think
Yeah.
for like every person, it's just sometimes you just have to get out of your own head and sitting in
Mhm.
silence and saying, all I'm going to do right now is I'm going to breathe. I'm going to breathe. And then when I lift up my eyes, hopefully it feels different. And most of the time it feels different. And if it doesn't feel different, that's okay. But at least I tried something. And then I can move on to the next thing and the next thing. But I always start there. And it doesn't have to be box breathing. It could be meditation, or, for some people, their version of box breathing is going to the gym or going to yoga or whatever it is, but like something that I can take myself out of myself and not just feel trapped inside my own brain.
Mhm.
Typically that is like the reset, right? And at least from there, like then I recognize the patterns, or I recognize like what's wrong, and I can go fix that, right?
Mhm.
Like it does, I don't instantly feel better, but maybe I know like, oh, like I don't feel great about myself today because I ate like shit last night. I drank too much. I haven't been in the sun. I haven't had any water. Okay, let's go do those things.
Mhm.
And I can reset myself and put myself back on the track where I need to be. Or it's like, hey, I don't feel great about my self image right now, actually, because I was really not nice to that girl last night. And I need to go
Mhm.
apologize for that.
Mhm.
And if you can get out of yourself, you can recognize what your own reality is, at least for me.
Yeah, no, it's true. Like we live in our heads. I mean, I live in my head
Yeah.
so much. I mean, in the past 48 hours, I can't even I've been in a war. Like like and that's the thing, and it's this it's the worry and anxiety which stems from the future of
Hmm.
that's not even real. It's not even happening
Of
right now.
course.
It's like
Yeah.
all about being present, and it's so hard to be present,
Hmm.
and leads us back to like social media. Like you have to be present and sit
Hmm.
in the discomfort, or else you're never going to get to know yourself and what's actually real right in front of you.
Hmm.
And then you talk about, which ties into my podcast of or this podcast, is the art you consume and how
Yeah.
it can be very detrimental, and like how
Hmm.
you consume it. And
Hmm.
I related to that so much because I am incredibly sensitive to watching television.
Hmm.
And I, if I watch The Bear, I am on edge. I'm
Uh-huh.
pissy. I'm
Uh-huh.
just mad. I'm doing things in a
Hmm.
rush. And I'm like, why do I feel this way? Oh, because I just watched 6 hours of people screaming at each
Hmm.
other. And it's
Hmm.
like, I can't watch shows like that. But
Yeah.
I can sit there if I take myself out of it and I go, I'm going to watch it from an actor's perspective.
Hmm.
Go, okay, how did they set up this shot?
Hmm.
How did he prepare for this monologue? I
Hmm.
wonder how many times they had to shoot it. Like
Hmm.
I have to separate things. The only things that I
Hmm.
can actually like get into and watch
Yeah.
as like just a straight up viewer enjoying it are the really like Friends and Gilmore
Hmm.
Girls and
Hmm.
Heart of Dixie, like the happy go
I
lucky
wanted to bring that
shows.
up, by the way. I wanted to bring up Heart of Dixie because I was listening to a show, and I think you're the only human I've ever met that's mentioned Heart of Dixie in the history of reality. So,
Wait, do you watch it?
oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Oh my god, that makes me so happy.
Wade Kinsella. Yeah, I've watched Heart
Wade
of Dixie.
Kinsella. Maybe that's my problem. Like I think that like every
You
I
have unrealistic. You think life's gonna that he's kind of a douchebag though. I don't think you should like subject. He turns out all right, but
Yeah, that's my
yeah,
problem. I have the
that's what you
hope.
want. You want
I
the
have the
arc.
hope that they're
You want the
gonna
arc. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
I
No,
want
I
the arc.
think, I think, yeah, that's a great show, by the way. And somehow they got half the cast of Friday Night Lights, which I think is so funny.
I know,
Because I watched
right?
that show in high school, and then
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's literally I don't know what
It's so
happened
funny.
there.
My
Some
friend
of
just texted me that they're at the dentist and Connie Britton is there. And I was like,
really,
clear. Yes,
yeah,
I
I'd
just said
faint.
clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose. Like,
I'd faint. Um, Nevertheless, um, I think and I think this is a really apt time for you to bring this up too, so I really appreciate it. Like,
mhm,
I think it's all kind of consumption across media, right? It's movies, it's TV, it's music, it's news. Like, it's a you could very easily right now be spending 12 hours a day watching CNN, right?
mm,
Like, it's a, you could be on Twitter finding out every piece of information about the coconut heads and Kamala's new movement, right? Like
mhm,
you can get sucked in that rabbit hole so quickly.
mhm,
And being intentional with what you're going to watch is, I think, a really important thing that anybody can do, right?
mhm,
Because if you are, and also actually watching it, by the way, that's another getting back to social media, but like I work in the marketing world, right? Like we are very well aware that like we call it first screen, second screen advertising. Like we are advertising to you on your phones in a different way than we're advertising to you on a screen, not because they're different sizes, but because we know that people who are watching on a TV screen aren't actually watching.
mhm,
That's a whole side note.
mhm,
Um, just the entire world knows you're addicted to social media, but you. Um, and a lot of people are making money off of it.
mhm.
But it's it's just a matter of being really intentional with what you're watching, I think. And again, right, knowing like how does that make me feel, or like what value is this providing to my life? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I've seen The Sopranos 100 times. I'm not exactly sure what The Sopranos is providing to me. You know what I mean? I like, and again, I think I'm pretty sensitive to that too. Like I get like angrier. Like, why am I turning into Tony Soprano?
Yeah.
Like, why do cold cuts give me panic attacks? But like it's real, right? And
Yeah.
I think this entire conversation is like, I think you just need to check in with the intention of what you're doing everything in your life with, right?
Hmm.
Like, why am I moving the way I'm moving in any specific part of my life? Why am I working the way I'm working? Why am I driving home the way I'm driving home? Why am I listening to Cheryl Crow for the 13th time this week? Like,
Hmm.
what are these touchstones in my life, and why am I going to them? And if you can set a healthy relationship with them and you know what they're providing in your life, then go hog wild, girl. You know what I mean? Watch Harry Potter for the third time this week. I don't care, but like make sure you're honest with yourself about what that is.
Right. Right. And yeah, it's so true. And it is like, it could be so simple if we're like, if this doesn't make me feel good, why am I going to do it?
Why am I going to do it?
Like,
Right.
and being so
Right.
aware of that, like, do you feel good or do you feel shitty?
Right.
And if like it's just a simple yes or no question,
Right.
and like being able to like have the self-control to either walk away from it, delete it from your phone, cut that person out of your life,
Yeah.
not eat, 20 hash browns. Like, I mean, I've had
Yeah.
Fruity Pebbles for dinner every night. And you know what? It
Yeah.
doesn't make me feel bad and it makes me
Yeah.
happy. Next
Then do
week,
it.
next week it might not. And I might go, I never want to have another bowl of Fruity Pebbles. I'm
Hmm.
on a kick though.
Hmm.
And it's
Yeah.
making me happy. But
You get fixated on meals.
oh yes.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Oh yes. Like I
Yeah.
will literally find something that I like, eat it morning, noon, and night, then
Hmm.
never have it again for like 5 years.
Hmm.
Are you like that?
Of course I am. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I find things that like the other thing is too that like, okay, so the one like obsession I've allowed to keep in my life that like I think is probably not a healthy relationship, but it's healthy to my body. My family all has like heart issues. So like me
Mhm.
like being really obsessive over like the food I put in my body, I
Mhm.
think is like a net benefit. I'm not sure the relationship's healthy and I'm working on it, but like
Mhm.
I'm very obsessive, not in like a body dysmorphic way, but just in a like, what kind of nutrients is this providing to my body kind of way,
Right. Right.
you know? And so yeah, this week it has been protein pasta and it's been penne alla vodka all week with chicken sausage
I
all
love
week.
that.
Lunch, dinner, like whatever. Or like I could list off to you like the macros on it. Like I'm good. I know exactly what's in this. We're good to go. But like, yeah, there's a point where I was buying like 5 dozen eggs at a time because I was like fixated on like eggs and
Yeah.
yeah,
I get
yeah,
it.
it just happens. Yeah.
I get it. I get it. Now, when there what's a show that you consume in a positive way?
That's a good question. Um, I want to give a good shout out here because I feel like I want to hit the ether of the show correctly. Um,
Whatever's true to you.
yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay, I'm gonna go with two. So I mentioned Jerry Seinfeld earlier. I really love comedians in cars getting coffee, which I know is maybe the dorkiest answer I could ever give in my life, but I really just like
That
I
show's
love
great.
entertain I love entertaining people having entertaining conversations with each other. Like
Mhm.
I love finding like the little nuances and like the conversation that I didn't notice before. I think it's wonderful. And then Veep. I don't know if you've ever seen Veep
I have seen some
before, but
episodes. She's great.
I love that show. It's like all jokes and
Mhm.
like it honestly, even though they're probably the worst people on planet Earth, like in that show, what relaxes me about it is just like, oh, they're human. Like I'm seeing people in powerful positions like portrayed as human. And it reminds me of like, okay, everything's okay. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
there's still, oh yeah, those people are human. You know what I mean? Those people you see on TV are human.
Mhm.
Everybody's normal, you know?
Mhm. It's funny, it's kind of like comedians in cars with coffee, and then with Veep combined.
Yeah.
I will watch the Seth Meyers day drinking interviews. Do you ever
Yeah.
watch
Yeah.
those?
Yeah.
And her
Yeah. Yeah.
Julia Louis-Dreyfus,
Yeah.
hers was so funny. And like I
She's the
do
best.
I
She's the
know.
greatest.
I love watching those where it's just again like these people we think that are larger than life just being completely
Yeah.
normal and like laughing and real and they're just with a bud. And I do like when they don't feel so far away almost. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
attracted to the authenticity. I'm
A
attracted
hundred
to
percent.
like, oh, there's a commonality between me and this
A hundred
person.
percent.
Like we put
And
them on a pedestal, society puts them on a pedestal,
yeah,
but really they're just
that's
normal
just a
people.
human, and they're flawed,
Yeah.
and they have all sorts of problems. Yeah, my friends though is New Girl because you know, that's like it's the same exact show,
Hmm.
um,
I
but
was
different.
I was just
But
saying that to like this young girl. She was like 19 years old. She was like, I've never seen Friends, but I've watched New Girl. And I was like, let me tell you, New Girl is
that's,
just a modernized Friends.
that's
Like,
all it is.
that's all it
That's
is.
all
Yeah.
it is. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Zoe
Is
Deschanel's
there,
a little bit more twee. Like that's about it.
yeah. Yeah.
Everything
I,
else is
I
the same.
do. I love New Girl so much. Like,
They
I
even
think,
did the will they won't they. Like at some
mhm.
point, like they just started like taking the plot lines.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
the characters are different. The characters are certainly different, but they kind of share some similarities.
Yeah.
You can see
Yeah.
in the beginning, like it literally was a Friends ripoff. And then
I could not
they
agree
started
more.
to find their own way. They
Uh-huh.
started to find their own way, but it's like literally, okay,
Yep.
all right, this is a Fox show. You were trying to just like rip and replace, see what we got here.
Hmm.
But yeah, I love that show. I
When
love
you
that show. I love
were,
Friends too.
yeah, I mean, Friends is just, I literally the other night was like having this panic
Yeah.
attack and I just put on Friends and I was like, nothing bad can happen if I'm
Yeah.
watching Friends.
Yeah.
Like it's just
Yeah. Yeah.
not, it's not
Yeah.
gonna, it's the law.
Yeah.
Like that's
I
what
think
I've
Parks and
decided.
Recreation is like my pacifier, to be honest. Ron
Okay.
Swanson reminds me of every Midwestern man I've ever grown up around. You know what I mean? It's like I know you, Ron Swanson.
Yeah.
A piece of you lives within me. Like I know who
Yeah.
you are. It's
Now,
like okay, I feel
when you were
comfy.
moving around and like feeling very alone, was
Yeah.
there something that you watched or listened to that made you feel like
Yeah.
comforted in those times?
It was mostly music.
Mm-hmm.
Music has been like the big through line throughout my life. Um, I always say the Beatles are like part of my past, my present, and like will always be part of my future. Like I find something new in every Beatles song every time I listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
Which is the dorkiest answer I could provide. Yeah, I honestly it was exploring music though. It was finding a new subgenre. It was like
Yeah.
every little day of finding like a new band. Like I'll never forget like when I was 13 and I found the Arctic Monkeys, like I thought I was the coolest kid that had ever lived.
Mm,
You know what I
mhm,
mean? It's like, oh,
mhm.
I love this band, or like T-Pain or whatever it was, right? And that was a cool thing too. Like with every region I moved to, like I got new music. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like I got a whole new like I had never heard a rap song until I turned like 10 because I was living in
Mhm.
this like podunk little town in Colorado previous. And then like all of a sudden I'm in a community where like you hear a lot of rap music, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
It's like, okay, now I know who Akon is, and I'm very happy about it. You know what I mean? Like life
That's
changes.
so funny.
Life changes.
Yeah. Tell people where they can get this book and what is your like what could you say is your biggest hope for this book and that you hope
Yeah.
people take away from reading it?
I hope the biggest takeaway that people have is that they have agency. You have agency in your own mental health.
Mhm.
You're not alone. There's a lot of people, other people struggling. Nice mug. Um,
Oh my God,
Snappy
I
the
just
road bug. Kismet, dude. Kismet.
that is
Um,
crazy. I
that
didn't
is crazy.
wow.
Lightning strikes. Um, No, but what I will say to people is you have agency in your own mental health. You are not alone. And a lot of the problems you have right now probably weren't caused by you, but it is on you to fix them. But there is a
Mhm.
path you can go down. Um, and what I really hope is just like two people have their life changed by this book. That's it. One is
Mhm.
fine too. I really don't care. But like if I'm able to make an impact on anybody's life, I think it'd be worth every moment I spent
Right.
writing this book. You can find it on Amazon, probably is the easiest way for most people to find it. It's called The Real Confident You, Advice from a 20-something Suicide Survivor. My name is Pat Broe. It's probably the easiest way to look it up. You can find me on Instagram at Pat Broe. I will not be on there replying to DMs very much, but I promise if you reach out and you say something kind or you're looking for help, I will do my best to reach out as much as possible. And yeah, that's it. Those are my plugs.
Amazing. And I want you to know too, like it's hard when we are doing so much output, like
Yeah.
we feel like we're just putting things out and we don't hear a lot of things back all the
Yeah.
time. So we
Yeah.
lose sight of what we do and like why we do it because we're like, well, nobody, it's
Mhm.
still that validation. Like,
Yeah.
of course, like I want my podcast to do well. I want people to listen to the episode. I want people's feedback, but sometimes you don't always get that. But then out
Yeah.
of nowhere, somebody will have the the guts or
Yeah.
vulnerability to reach out and be like, I just want you to know. And then you go, oh, okay. So I
Yeah.
hope that you hold on to that. Like,
Thank you. Yeah, I
and
am
that
going
you
to take
are
that.
holding on to that.
That was really I'm really thankful for that. That's
Because
nice.
again,
It's
like,
a lot of, like, oh, this is so good. But yeah, I hope there's a torch passed at some point. But
yeah,
that's selfish of me, but it's true.
no, not at
Yeah,
all. And honestly, like I said, like I'm reading this book now and like I'm going to Santa Barbara for a solo trip this weekend to
it's
kind of like
exciting.
reconnect with
It's
myself. I've
exciting.
never been on a vacation before in my life.
Look at
Of
you.
I know. And so I'm just going on, like, granted Santa Barbara's only an hour and a half
Nice.
away, but it's like it's a mini vacation
Yeah.
and I've
You
never
can
been
Anthony
there.
Bourdain Santa Barbara.
Yeah. So I'm like, and I'm gonna read
Like,
this book. I'm gonna do
yeah,
exercises from this book because I need it right now. And like, I know that I'm in a place right now where I have to dig myself out of this hole
yeah,
if I want a better future for my life. And like, what's going on in my life can't continue.
yeah.
And so it is something that is inspiring me and it's helping me take care of myself. So thank you for that.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for just engaging with it. Thank you for having me on the show. This has been wonderful and like really a lovely conversation. Thank you so much, Brittany. And I have a new podcast I get to listen to, which is great. It's so exciting.
Yes, I am excited. That makes me very happy. And where can people buy this book? Did you say that?
Amazon
Amazon?
is probably the easiest place for people to find it. It's in bookstores, but just go to Amazon.
Okay, amazing. Pat, thank you so much. This was a blast.
Oh, ooh, sorry. One more
Yes,
thing.
tell me.
I've made the ebook 99 cents because I don't think money should be an issue for people to buy this. Like if you're not financially have the means right now, or someone who doesn't have financial means, I don't think price should be a blocker. So the ebook is 99 cents if you're worried about that when you're going to Amazon. That's all. Sorry for the
Amazing.
yeah.
Oh gosh, no, you're fine.
Yeah.
That's amazing and very kind of you to do.
Yeah.
Please keep in touch.
Yes,
Have an
absolutely.
amazing day.
I mean it too. I mean it too.
I
I'm not the
mean,
friend
do
that'll
it.
abandon it. I'm not going to abandon it.
Thank
have a
you
wonderful
so
day, yeah.
much. You too. I'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.